Someone says, we went upstairs to look at the photos. Where would they have to be?
Well, who said they went upstairs?
Showing Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
Higgins is not very good at rehearsed statements. He doesn't memorize them exactly, and then he tries to improvise.
My husband and his friend Brian were in our family room.
Showing Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs. My son's room.
Our family room.
Quote, I've never been upstairs. Is that
Yes.
right?
My son, Jack, who's one of the twins, was in the Marine. We had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs.
I've never been upstairs. Is that
Yes.
right? So when everybody was leaving, did you leave before they did, John and Karen, or did they leave before you did?
I don't know.
You said you were the first one back to Brian Albert's house, correct?
Yes.
Safe to say you were one of the first ones to leave.
I was the first one to leave
Waterfall.
the waterfall.
On the stand is big old Brian Higgins, Higgy Bear, and he's testifying about when he left the waterfall. This was prior to us knowing that there was video capturing him taunting John to come back to 34 Fairview. Let's watch.
Probably.
I mean, if you're if everybody's herding out and you're the first one to get there, you're probably among the first to leave, correct?
Most likely.
You didn't say goodbye or walk over and give John a big hug or anything like that? An
No.
acknowledgement, did you?
No.
You just left.
Well, that's what everybody was doing, just leaving.
Okay. You too, correct?
I did leave, yes.
And you didn't say goodbye to John, correct?
I don't think I said goodbye to anybody.
The address and sort of where you were going. Did you know where you were going that night?
I knew where I was going, yes.
Are you familiar with the address and where you were going?
This handsome brother, Sergio De Niro from the YouTube channel Truth Revealed, and he's amazing at analyzing text from people and determining whether or not they're lying. Let's listen.
Did you know where you were going that night? And he says, I knew where I was going, yes. Again, we have a statement before the yes, so that is extra information. And the way he says it, I knew where I was going, yes. That tells you that he's a man on a mission. The question would have been sufficiently answered with just a yes, which would have fit Higgins' baseline. This tells me that he is expecting a confrontation with O'Keefe, and it's probably based on the conversation that he had with O'Keefe.
How amazing is Sergio? He was able to tell us that Higgins was in a conflict with John over Karen just by analyzing his words. Sergio worked for the Department of Defense for many years, and his skills are paying off now as we track down and prosecute old Higgy Bear.
Seems like he wants to hash something out, and I'm willing to bet that it has to do with Karen Reed.
Didn't talk to him about coming over to 34 Fairview.
No.
Yet at 2:20 in the morning, you texted John O'Keefe, you coming here, correct?
At 2:20?
Sorry, 12:20.
I did.
And that had 3 question marks behind it, correct?
Yes.
Did you text Karen about coming over to 34 Fairview?
No.
So at 12:20 a.m., you were more interested in getting John to come to 34 Fairview than you were to getting Karen to come to 34 Fairview.
No, that's not how I would describe that.
But you didn't text Karen, correct?
No, I didn't.
But you did text John.
Yes.
You've indicated that you took your Jeep, your personal vehicle with the plow on it, over to 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
And you were among the first to arrive because you were doing that thing with the sort of playing around by plowing his driveway.
It was a sweep of the driveway, yeah.
There were about 5 statements that Higgy Bear made during his testimony that triggered something inside me, saying that he was being so dishonest and so misleading. And the sweep of the driver was one of them. When I first heard it, I knew this was something that was so misleading. But the real question is, why is he saying this? And we're about to find out.
You get to your house. What, if anything, happens sort of as you're coming into your driveway?
It looks like that. It had looked like Brian had gotten there first, Brian Higgins, and he was backing out so I could pull my car in.
So he had arrived at your house before you, is that correct?
Yes.
It looked like he had done something to the driveway?
He may have skimmed. Yeah, he had a plow on his truck, and I think he may have plowed the driveway and then pulled out, and then we pulled in.
Drove from the waterfall to Fairview Road. About how long a drive was that?
Probably a few minutes. But the weather was, I remember when I came out, I put the wipers on. There was some snow on the ground, but it was the type of snow where...
The question was, how long is the drive? And listen to all the extra information old Higgy Bear gives us.
The roadway was still black at the time, but because it was being driven on, but the sidewalk had a light coating.
You drove from the waterfall to Fairview Road. How long a drive was that? Probably a few minutes. So that's it. He's done. There's nothing left to say on this. And then he says, but the weather was, this. I remember is a problematic statement. You can't say something you don't remember. So saying I remember is kind of like saying I was breathing. It's completely irrelevant. I know that you remember this if you're saying it. So when you say I remember, it's a good indicator that you're fabricating.
God, I love Sergio.
I remember when I came out, I put the wipers on. There was some snow on the ground, but it was the type of snow where the roadway was still black at the time. But because it was being driven on, but the sidewalk had a light coating. This information is all extra information after the question was answered in full. This information plays a role in the event of the evening for Higgins. Higgins is talking about this because it's important to him. And if it's important to him, it's important to us.
I'm glad Sergio picked up on this because so did I. I felt it.
He's really over-explaining. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines here of over-explanation. He's got the word because in here, which makes it sensitive. He's got I remember, which makes it sensitive and fabricated.
And you drive over to the home, and you mentioned that you beat Mr. Albert there. Is that correct?
I did.
With regard to the home, when you get there, what did you do when you got there?
Well, I was kind of being a smart ass, and I dropped the plow and I did a little sweep of the driveway, and then I got out of the driveway because I didn't want to get blocked in, and I parked.
Well, I was kind of being a smart ass, and I dropped the plow and I did a little sweep of the driveway, and then I got out of the driveway because I didn't want to get blocked in, and I parked. The reason Higgins got out of the driveway was not because he didn't want to get blocked in. The explanatory plus a negative statement makes that statement deceptive. It's a simple statement. So we have to figure out what's the deception here. Being a smartass? No, I think he's truthful on that. I dropped the plow, I did a little sweep of the driveway, and then I got out of the driveway because I didn't want to get blocked in. The lie is actually here. I did a little sweep of the driveway. How could that be a lie? Why would you lie about that? And the answer is the lie is in the time. I don't think that he actually did the sweep of the driveway before Higgins got there.
You better believe it, Sergio. And now we're piecing together exactly why he lied about that.
You're probably thinking, of course he did. That's how the timeline goes. But that is not what the language is telling us here. But something as big as a sweep of the driveway, if it's mentioned, it's important information. So we cannot disregard this no matter what. But we have a serious question mark here of the time because it's deceptive. I want to reinforce the fact that this is a very problematic statement. He's giving you a timeline, and his language is telling you that he's giving you wrong, inaccurate information.
We know from the weather charts and video surveillance there wasn't enough snow on the ground to sweep it, whether to do it as a joke or to actually help them. So why did he do it? And the answer's right there. When John O'Keefe left Karen's SUV, he created a trail, footprints throughout the entire snow. Higgins did not do the sweep before. He did it when he left to cover any tracks that John made that led right into the house.
You mentioned that Mr. Higgins had sort of scooped with the plow like in the driveway and then parked on the street. Do you recall where in relation to your house or your driveway he parked?
So no, I don't remember where Brian Higgins parked. I remember him pulling out so I could pull in, and then I didn't really see where he parked.
And then you indicated that you parked in front of the house, correct?
I did.
Exactly where was your Jeep in front of that house?
By the mailbox. The rear would have been about around equal with the mailbox, and I was not blocking the driveway.
We know this is a lie. The kids that pulled up in the truck to pick up someone from the house all said that there was no girly Jeep with a plow in it right where Higgins indicated.
It was definitely past the driveway, yes.
When you walked into 34 Fairview, you indicated that there were people congregated basically in the kitchen area, correct?
There were some people in the kitchen area, yes.
But at some point, you had moved out of that kitchen area with Brian Albert, correct?
Well, I briefly went and looked at some photos.
Right. So you moved out of that area with Brian Albert alone to go to a different room.
Yes, and I think his wife Nicole might have popped in the room for a second, but it was brief.
The question was, did you move away from the kitchen? And the answer should be either yes or no. Instead, he offers additional information from a technical standpoint, from a Vince the lawyer to his client testifying standpoint. This is a wrong answer, but we can rely on our brother Sergio in this community to figure out why Higgy Bear is lying about this.
Did you have anything to drink while you were at 34 Fairview?
This statement coming up is another one that I wrote down that I was sure Higgy Bear was misleading us or lying.
They didn't have any whiskey. I believe they might have put a beer or something else in front of me, and You know, I knew it was going to be a short night there.
First of all, every single Irish house has whiskey. It's the first thing they buy. If they run out of milk, they buy more whiskey. They run out of bread, they buy whiskey. So we know that's a lie. But more importantly, we know that this is a story, a script that he wants us to believe. And it seems very plausible. An Irish drunk that can only get his hands on a beer compared to whiskey obviously can't stay at the party.
Because I just wasn't going to, I'm not a beer drinker.
You've indicated in a prior testimony that you've never been upstairs in Brian's house, correct?
When you say upstairs, like, were you talking like second floor?
Correct.
Yes, no,
Okay. You testified to that in a prior hearing, is that right?
yes,
In May of 2023.
yes,
And you said specifically, quote, "I've never been upstairs." Is that
Yes.
right? All right.
At one point, I may have shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
Uh-oh, someone didn't get their story straight.
Quote, "I've never been upstairs." Is that
Yes.
right? All right.
And what kind of photos are we talking?
One of my son Jack, who's one of the twins, was in the Marines, or is in the Marines. We had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs. Plaques, his room upstairs.
How definitive is that story? My son Jack, a twin in the Marines, we put the plaques upstairs in his room. There's no way you can mistake being upstairs in Jack's room compared to being anywhere else in the house.
Upstairs.
Quote, "I've never been upstairs." Is that
Yes.
right? All right.
Brian Higgins was prior military, as am I, and I thought he would want to see the photos, so I had him look at them.
Of course, these two big dopes, when they're coming up with their scheme, think that if they mention that they were in the military, somehow we're going to believe them more.
Dining room area, looking at the photos with Mr. Higgins. About how long a period of time are we talking?
Very, very quickly, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes.
You understood when you gave that statement that you were under oath?
yes,
You were
Huge indicator of deception. When your body is under stress, it sends extra energy to your limbs because it's getting you ready to fight or flight or freeze. Here, Higgy Bear can't leave, so what humans do is they mask that energy in grooming behavior. Obviously, he's under stress right now, and it's a huge indicator of deception.
telling the truth.
yes,
Same oath that you took here today, correct?
yes.
You indicated that the photos that you saw were on the first floor living room area. Is that right?
I believe that's where they were, yes.
So the only floor downstairs from the first floor would be what?
The basement,
And the only floor upstairs from the basement would be what?
the first floor.
Very good, Higgy Bear.
So if someone were to describe going upstairs to look at the photos that you've described on the first floor, where would they have to be to go upstairs to look at those photos?
And beyond the sort of kitchen area that you were describing before, where else did you go within the house that night?
At one point, briefly, Brian Albert showed me some photographs, family. I believe primarily it might have been of his son who had recently been in the Marine Corps. Gone into, I should say.
At one point, that's another missing time statement. At one point means there's a lot of points that he's not telling you. Briefly, Brian Albert showed me some photographs. Family, I believe. If he showed him photographs and he doesn't know if it was family, primarily it might have been of his son, who had recently been in the Marine Corps, gone into, I should say. This is a rehearsed statement. Higgins is not very good at rehearsed statements. He doesn't memorize them exactly, and then he tries to improvise. When he improvises, he begins to reduce commitment to that statement. So his rehearsed statements come across as both rehearsed and deceptive. Then Higgins does not say that he didn't go anywhere else in the house. And beyond yourself and Mr. Albert, was there anyone else from the group that you described as coming into the room at the time, Mr. Albert? And he says,
I don't think so. I think Nicole may have popped in for a second, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
Do you see what Sergio's saying? Higgy Bear's statements are intentionally vague. Maybe Nicole came in, maybe she didn't. That way, if anyone has any evidence to contradict his lie, he can refer back to his statement where he said, maybe she came in, maybe she didn't.
I don't think so. I don't think so is hugely, hugely problematic here, because if it's just two people in a room for what he described as a moment, so maybe 1 minute, and he doesn't know if a third person walked in, that means that this is not coming from memory. This is completely fabricated. This is a cover story. I don't think so. I think Nicole may have popped in for a second, but I'm not 100% positive on that. What he's telling you is, I rehearsed this with Brian Albert. Brian Albert told me what to say.
Shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs. We had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs.
And I can't remember what to say.
You said specifically, quote, I've never been upstairs. Is that
Yes.
right?
God damn it, Higgy Bear. We had the script and you couldn't stick to it?
That Nicole Albert may have popped in. The reason why he inserted that is because she was part of that conversation. There was at some point, Higgins, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert were together having a conversation about this. And Brian Albert told Higgins, when we have to talk about this, we're going to say that you and I went into this room to look at a photograph of my son because he went into the Marine Corps, and I was showing you this photograph. Higgins can't remember here whether Albert is going to say that Nicole was there or not. Now Higgins feels compelled to say it was just us, but Nicole may have popped in there. That way, if Albert later says that Nicole came in or Nicole was there, then Higgins can say, yeah, I wasn't sure, but yeah.
I know at one point my husband and his friend Brian were in our family room, so I kind of went in there and was talking to them.
How amazing is Sergio? His analysis is spot on.
We had some shelves on the wall that just had a bunch of pictures, old pictures from our wedding or when Brian was in the Marines, so we would just kind of look at them, laugh, and talking about them. We stood in there for a little bit talking, and then eventually we just moved into the kitchen area where everybody else was.
God damn it, Nicole, you and Higgins. I had the goddamn script perfect. Upstairs, Jack's room, Marines. Not downstairs, wedding, my Marine picture.
Higgins stated that he was only in the room for a moment and that he can't remember if a third person entered the room with them. The statement doesn't make sense on its face. Two people in a small room aren't going to know if a third person goes in. Nicole was part of this conversation, and Higgins wasn't sure if Albert was going to say that she was in the room or not. The rehearsed statement was that Nicole wasn't in the room, but that seems like such a big lie that Higgins finds it impossible not to mitigate the deception.
And someone says, we went upstairs to look at the photos, where would they have to be?
Well, who said they went upstairs?
Shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
Higgins is not very good at rehearsed statements. He doesn't memorize them exactly, and then he tries to improvise.
My husband and his friend Brian were in our family room.
Shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs. My son's room.
Our family room.
Quote, I've never been upstairs. Is that
Yes.
right?
My son, Jack, who's one of the twins, was in the Marines. We had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs.
Right now, Karen's jury is still out, but the one thing we know from both trials is the police in Massachusetts can do many things well, they just can't solve crimes. That means the onus is upon all of us in this community to piece together exactly what happened and bring the real killers to justice.